This is the Sonia Beach Bag. It's a brand new pattern for me at Studio 77 and it packs so much in. This is fantastic for a trip to the pool or the beach. We've got lots of features on this too. So on the outside we have 4 slip pockets, perfect for your sun cream or your sunglasses or even your flip-flops. I have chosen to make this all out of waterproof material, so I recommend you do that too. So I am using waterproof canvas for the inside, and then we've got that faux leather at the base, and then we've got clear vinyl for the middle section. You can change it up and do it as you like. You could use faux leather throughout the outside. We have also got webbing straps. Again, you could make your own straps, and we've got a magnetic closure at the top. On the inside we have got a water bottle holder, a slip pocket and a zipper pocket, which is perfect for your valuables. Now I'm going to take you through this bag step by step. We're going to give you loads of tips and tricks as I go along. Please don't worry, this is not a super complicated bag. It comes together quickly. It is an intermediate bag, but I always say give it a go. So let's get started. Okay, so the first thing you're going to want to do is to download the pattern pieces, and you can find the link to that in the description below. If you're using a projector file or the projector file, you're also going to want to get that set up, and you're going to want to think about which materials you're going to use. Now, as this is a beach bag, I have recommended that you use waterproof fabrics. So I am using a waterproof canvas for my lining, a lightweight one, and then I've got a faux leather, a suede for my outer, and then I've got the clear vinyl that goes through the middle. Now, please be aware, if you have bought the bag maker's box for May and you haven't opened it yet, there are spoilers ahead, so you may want to wait until you receive your box before you continue watching this video. Okay, that being said, if you wanted to use a quilting cotton for this bag, you can do so as well. You would want to interface it with a non-woven interfacing for any lining that you're using quilting cotton for, and a woven interfacing for your outer. Like I say, I'm using a lightweight waterproof canvas for my lining and faux leather for my base and my outer. And then I have got a clear vinyl for the middle piece. Now, the other thing I wanted to mention as well for the clear vinyl, let's pop these out the way, is that a lot of clear vinyl, when you receive it, has a film on it. I don't know if you're going to be able to tell the difference, but this is like a jelly clear vinyl. It's a lot easier to kind of manipulate and bend, whereas this one is a lot thicker. Exactly the same product, but this one has the film already on it. And when you get it, it looks like there's no film on it. Don't know if you can see, but it looks like there's nothing attached. So what you need to do is just bend the corner with this one particularly, and you may find that yours is the same. Can you see that that's kind of going crinkly? Hopefully that's picking up on the camera. And you'll see that it's going crinkly and a little bit odd where you're kind of rolling that corner, and eventually, after a couple of goes, you will find that there is a clear film on the back. So we just want to peel that off. Trust me, you don't want to do that at the end once you've done all your sewing, and find that out. Let's get that out the way. Let's get that out the way, and then we can move on. So we've got our pieces cut out for the clear vinyl. Like I say, you can use a quilting cotton for the middle. All the edges are encased on this pattern, so that's totally fine to do that. You could also use a shower curtain as well. I did have a couple of testers do that. Then I just wanted to talk about this bottom panel. Please excuse my brown paper tape. I like to use brown tape because it's a little bit more eco-friendly when I don't need it to be see-through. So this bottom piece is cut on the fold, as you can see along here. So if your fabric that you have for your base is not big enough, that's totally fine. Instead of cutting it on the fold, just add on 1 centimetre along that edge and cut it twice. You're then going to want to stitch that seam up first before you begin and do anything else, because obviously that's not written in the instructions and you may get confused or forget. So if you don't have a big enough piece, that's totally fine. You will then end up with a seam along middle of the base. So as you can see on this one, we don't have a seam through the middle, so you would have a seam. So that's just something to bear in mind. And that also applies for the lining fabric as well, because you have to cut one of these in outer and one of these in the lining. The other things that you're going to want to prep up is a zipper for the inside. You're going to want to have 2 handles as well, 2 webbing strips. You can make these handles, of course, if you would prefer. These are 1¼ inches, so just make them up to be the same width, and then it will all correspond with the pattern instructions. You're also going to want to prep up some bias binding. I have made mine to be 1/2 inch on the fold or 1 inch unfolded, and it doesn't have to be cut on the bias. It doesn't need to be stretchy, so this is just a strip made into bias binding. I'm also going to be using a Microtex needle for this, a 90 size, and I'm going to be using my walking foot. Super important with clear vinyl and the faux leathers, of course, as well. In fact, I use it all the time. And if you're finding that your clear vinyl is sticking to your machine, you can also cut out some baking paper like this. You can cut out a hole in the middle and you can tape it either side so that it doesn't stick. You'll see me do this a bit later on in the tutorial. Okay, onto the sewing. We're going to start off with making the inside zipper pocket. And for that, you're going to need pattern piece 1 and you're going to need pattern piece 5. I'm going to need to mark the centers of both. So because pattern piece 5 on the paper pattern is cut on the fold, we have already got a mark there, and so that's fine. And then this pattern piece 1, the way that it attaches is actually on the half as well, on the fold almost. So we have got that placement by just following that cut edge. Then we're going to mark down and measure down 1½ centimeters from that top edge, and that is 9/16 of an inch. It's important that there is a top to this zipper pocket. It's not quite a square, so just make sure you're putting the correct way up. You're also going to want to have it right sides together. Okay, and we're going to match up. I'm going to draw that on the back actually, so that I can see it. We're going to match up those lines. Then we're going to grab our pattern piece 1 again, lay that over the top, trying to not move that under piece. And we're going to draw on that zipper placement. Then we're going to stitch around that rectangle. Now obviously, because it's waterproof canvas on waterproof canvas, it can be a little bit kind of slippy. So I'm going to pinch that edge and just place a couple of clips to try and keep that together. You do want to make sure when you do that though, that you don't fold that under where you're going to be stitching, so it's still clear of that rectangle. And I'm going to stitch that with a 2½ stitch length. Okay, now that that's stitched, I'm then going to cut a line down the middle, and I'm going to do 2 kind of forks at each end, or 1 fork at each end. Then I'm going to push the whole of that zipper pocket through to the wrong side. Now this can be a little bit tricky because normally if we're using quilting cotton, we can give this a good old press and maybe even a bit of a steam. But obviously we can't do that with waterproof canvas. Don't put your iron anywhere near waterproof canvas because it's all going to melt and go horribly wrong. You can give it a bit of a finger press. That can sometimes help, but ultimately it's just going to want to go back to where it wants to be. So you have to kind of keep pulling and prodding it, and then it will sit nicely. Then I'm going to grab my double-sided tape. That's going to come in super handy because we're going to put our zipper in. So this is going to sit just behind. As you can see, straight away, the top of my zipper pocket is coming out to the front, which is really annoying. But I'm going to put double-sided tape on the zipper This is 1/4 inch tape. I will link to everything I use in the description below. You can of course have your zipper opening and closing whichever way you like to have it, but majority of times it will close on the left. So I'm going to place it behind, and this is, like I say, a little bit of a fiddle, but we can get there, and we want to line up the edge of the zipper pocket with the end of the zipper tape. So that can be a good place to start. And we want the zipper teeth to be in the middle of that hole that we just stitched. Okay, once you've got that centralised in the middle of that opening, we're then going to stitch around the edge of that rectangle about 1 millimetre or 2 from the edge, which is about 1/16 of an inch, and I'm going to use a longer top stitch of 3.5. And if when you get it over to the machine you find that it's not quite lying as nicely as you'd like it, you can of course tweak it a little bit too. Okay, so now we've got our zipper in, we're going to turn over that pattern piece 1. Just get rid of that extra long thread. And then we're going to sew up that pocket. So we're going to put it so that they are right sides together on that pocket piece, and we're going to clip and pin those 3 edges together. And I'm going to use a zipper foot when it comes to stitch this, and I'm going to stitch it from the zipper pocket side. And this is with a 2.5 stitch length. Okay, so that part is finished. We're going to pop that to one side, and we're going to work on the inside pockets. And for that, we're going to need the inside cup holder, which is pattern piece 4. Now, if you are using a quilting cotton for this, then you're going to want to cut 2 for this pattern piece. But if it's a waterproof canvas like I'm using, you only need to cut 1. And that is because you are going to see the back. A waterproof canvas is pretty much 2-sided, so it doesn't matter if we see the back, it's totally fine. And what you're going to want to do is you're going to fold over that top edge by 1 centimetre and then 1 centimetre again. Okay, so I'm going to pop some clips along the edge, folding it all the way along. So we've got that folded top edge. We're then going to flip it around, and we're going to do the same on the other edge. I like to just check that I've done the same seam allowance on both edges. Even it out, make sure I've not given myself too much. Okay, then we're going to sew along each edge a couple of millimetres, or about 1/16 of an inch from the edge. And I'm moving back to my walking foot for this. Okay, so now that's stitched, we're going to grab our pattern piece 1 that we stitched before with the zipper in it, and we're going to flip it around so that we are doing the opposite end, or the opposite side. And we're going to lay the cup holder, pattern piece 4, on top so that it is wrong sides down with the right side up of pattern piece 1. Then we're going to make a mark which is 2 centimetres down from that top edge. You want to make this in something that can be removable. We can still use a friction pen even though it is waterproof canvas, which we can't use an iron on, because we can use a hairdryer if need be to get rid of that mark. So then we're going to match up that top line with that mark that we've just made, and we're going to fold under that left edge by 1 centimetre. 1 centimetre. And we're going to place that on top 11.5 centimetres from that edge, which is 4.5 inches. So I'm going to pop a little mark on there. Make sure that top edge is matching up. Grab a clip. You can always take that off when we get to the machine. And then what we're going to do is we're going to stitch a rectangle, which is a 1 centimetre kind of deep rectangle top to bottom to attach that in place. Then we're going to repeat what we did for this end with the other end. So we're going to fold it under by 1 centimetre, and we're going to place that 11.5 centimetres or 4.5 inches from that right edge. Top edge, of course, needs to be 2 centimetres down from the top edge of pattern piece 1. Okay, so as you can see, we've got this kind of big loop for our cup holder piece. We're going to push it down, squash it down towards the left, and we are going to measure 17 centimetres or 6 and 11 inches. Sorry, 6 inches and 11/16 of an inch from this edge of the cup holder, of the slip pocket. I'm going to make a mark, and then we're going to stitch a line down along that mark and then along the bottom. That's going to create our slip pocket. And then, as you can see, it's also going to bulge that out, and that's going to be our cup holder. Be sure as well that you go backwards and forwards a few times on that top edge, because that's going to get a lot of wear and tear. Okay, we're going to pop that lining to one side, and we're then going to work on the outer pockets. So for the outside pockets, we're going to need pattern piece 3, and we've got those cut in the lining, 2 in the lining and 2 in the outer. So we're going to take 1 of each, 1 lining, 1 outer, and we're going to place them right sides together, and then we're going to clip and stitch along that top edge and the bottom edge. And that is using our 1 centimetre seam allowance. Then I'm going to reach through and I'm going to turn it the right way out. And I'm going to top stitch along that top edge. And my top stitch is 3.5 again, like always on this bag, and I'm stitching about 1/16 of an inch or a couple of millimetres from the edge. Okay, then we're going to repeat that with the other outer and lining pocket, outside pocket piece, which is pattern piece 3. Okay, so I've repeated that on the other outer and lining for the outside pockets. I'm going to put 1 to one side, and we're going to work on 1, and we're going to attach it, lay it on top of pattern piece 1 outer. And we want to lay it so that it is 1.5 or 1/2 inch from the top. So I'm just clipping it in place. And then we're going to stitch all the way along that bottom edge, and we're going to baste up the sides. So the basting is going to be 0.5 centimetre from the edge, and the lower stitches are going to be about 1/16 of an inch or 2 millimetres from that bottom edge. Okay, so that pocket is stitched in place. Then we're going to find the centre line, and we're going to stitch up that middle of the line. And we want to do quite a few stitches at the top and the bottom, because this is going to get a lot of wear and tear on it, being the outside pockets. You could also, as an alternative, start lower. So you could start it about 1 centimetre lower, and then you could pop a rivet just above it to give a little bit more strength as well. Okay, then we're going to repeat that process with the other side and the other pocket. Okay, so now we've got our outer pocket sewn on. We're going to pop that to one side, and we're going to grab the 2 clear vinyl pieces. and they are pattern piece 2. And we're also going to grab our strips that are going to go along the top. Now you can either do this with regular burst binding, or what I like to do is cut the same faux leather that I've used for the base, and then I'm going to cut a 2 centimetre strip and I'm going to lay it along the top and use that as binding. I'll show you what I mean. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, you're going to want to make sure that there's no film on the back of your vinyl. Sometimes it has it, sometimes it doesn't. And if you're doing it with this method, we're going to want to make a line in the middle of the strip. Then I'm going to use my double-sided tape and I'm going to run it each side of that line. Then I'm going to put the clear vinyl so that it butts up against that line we drew just before. And you're also going to be doing this along the top edge. If you've got a directional vinyl, then that's really important to know, but mine isn't, so it's not such an issue, but just something to note. And then when you fold over the other piece so that it meets, you want to make sure that you're matching it up, because obviously it's see-through. Not such an issue if you don't have see-through vinyl. You want to make sure that that's all lined up. Like so. Then I'm going to top stitch a couple of millimeters from that lower edge all the way along. Okay, then we're going to repeat that for the other piece of vinyl as well. When you're sewing your clear vinyl, you're finding that it's sticking really badly to your machine, then what you can do is you can take a piece of baking paper and you can cut a hole in the middle. Quite literally just cut a rectangle so that it's big enough for the hole in the machine. That's a very jagged hole, but you get the idea. It needs to go past the teeth as well, and then you can actually tape this to your machine using washi tape or masking tape, and the clear vinyl is then going to go a lot smoother over your machine. It's not going to stick on the plastic. So if you're having any troubles, then try that method. Okay, so now it's time to attach our handles. If you've sewn your handles with cotton, then you can just fold in the ends as you're making your strap. If you're using handles like I am, cut them to the length that you require. It does tell you in the instructions a recommended length, but of course if you want it a bit longer, a longer strap, then just check that that is good for you. Then we need to find the midpoint of pattern piece 2. So I'm just gonna go ahead and measure that and make a little mark. I'm going to fold the end under by 2 centimetres. This is especially important if you're using cotton webbing because you can't burn the edges. But if you're using nylon webbing, you could burn the edges, but it definitely looks neater folded under like this. I'm going to pop a little clip in there. And then that inside edge needs to be 8 centimetres or 3 1/8 from the midpoint. And I'm going to pop some double-sided to help to keep that in place, because it is, you know, slippy slidey with that clear vinyl. That's going to help keep that piece under as well. Okay, so it's 8 centimetres from that midpoint, and then the bottom fold of the handle needs to be 3 1/2 centimetres, which is also 1 3/8 of an inch from that top edge. While I'm here, I'm going to prep up the other side as well. Make sure that I haven't twisted the handle as I place that on. Okay, then I'm going to stitch that in place using a barn door formation. So if you're not sure what that is basically a square with across 2 lines in the middle. You could also put a rivet in there if you wanted to as well. And then we're going to repeat that on the other side. Okay, so we've got the handles attached. I'm going to Then repeat that with the other side. I've also added in my little tag up there. You can add it under the bound edge if you want to. You can add it underneath the handle, or you can add it as a square, you know, if you want to add a little tag. Okay, then we are going to move on to making the closing tab. Now this bit is optional. You might want to skip ahead and not have a closing tab at all, but here's how we do that. For this, we're going to need pattern piece 6 and we're going to need pattern piece 7. And we're going to put them right sides, we're going to put pattern piece 7 right sides together. And we're going to stitch all the way around the edge, but we're going to leave an opening of about 1 inch or 2 along one long edge. Then I'm going to cut off the triangles on the corners. And I'm going to cut into the turning edge here because we've got those corners there. We're going to cut out some triangles of the seam allowance. This is going to help it turn nicely and make all that seam allowance go into those corners. Then we're going to get a little piece of Decaville light and we're going to pop that in that area. Always like to curve off the corners so that if the kind of structure shows through, it's just going to look a bit more organic. Now we can't, of course, fuse that on in place because of the waterproof canvas. It will melt if we put an iron on it, so we're not going to do that. So we're going to use a little bit of double-sided tape to hold that in place. And because we're using the double-sided tape, I'm actually putting the tape onto the non-glue side. So it's not as shiny, it's a bit more matte. It's normally the back. So normally you'd fuse that side down, but because we want it to stick a bit better, we're going to do it like that, and we're going to place that in the middle, close to that seam allowance edge. Then we're going to turn the whole tab the right side out. I'm going to try and keep that Decaville in the right place as we turn it. Then we're going to take the male part of the magnetic snap and we're going to place that around 1.5 centimeters from that end, which is 9 1/16 of an inch, and we're going to center it as well. And when you place the magnetic snap in, you're going to want to be going through that Decaville that we put in earlier. We're going to put the keeper on the back. It's worth noting as well that we're not going through that front. We're only going through the lining and the Decaville. Then we're going to close the little prongs on the inside. Now, I don't know if you can see, but the stitching has come undone a little bit there where I turned it through. That's totally fine. We're going to top stitch it in a minute. So we're going to fold that seam allowance inside and clip it in place. And then, like I say, we're going to top stitch all the way around the edge. Now, it can be tricky to get close to that magnetic snap, so it's quite good to use a zipper foot for this. Tuck those ends in and then top stitch around that edge. Okay, so I've top stitched around that and then going to place that onto the back piece. So this I've decided is going to be my front because I've got my label on there. So I'm going to grab the other piece. You can just about still see that midway point. I'm just going to remark that. I'm going to place it with it wrong side down with the panel, the clear vinyl right side up. So they're both right side up, in fact. And we're going to place it centered with the bottom edge. It's going to be 3.8 centimeters or 1.5 inches down from the top of the bag. And then we're going to stitch a square or a barn door to keep that attached in place. Okay, then we're going to grab the front panel with the clear vinyl on, and we're going to make the other side of the magnetic snap. So we've got that central line again, just going to draw over that. And we want to grab our pattern piece 7s. And what we need to do is we're going to put some double-sided tape on the back of one. And we're going to place it centered with the bottom edge to be 1.5 inches down or 3.8 centimeters, sorry. So we've pretty much got it directly underneath that binding on this one. Then we're going to place our little piece of Decaville on the back. Again, rounding off the corners. Pop a little bit more double-sided. Make sure it's on the matte side. Just try to put it on the shiny side. And this is on the back of the clear, of course. So you want to make sure, obviously, that the Decaville is slightly smaller than that pattern piece 7. And then we're going to grab our magnetic snap, turn it over so the vinyl's on the top, and we're going to place our magnetic snap in the middle. So again, the prongs are going to go through the outer and through the Decaville. And of course, the clear vinyl is in the middle, sandwiched. Close our prongs. We have to push our prongs into the middle. Normally I'd push them out, but we have to because we're going to be stitching around it. And obviously we do not want to be sewing through those prongs. You know what I forgot to do? Put on the keeper. So I'll just open up those prongs again. Now what we can do as well is just place a little tiny bit of gaffer tape or duct tape over the prongs to keep that nice and secure. Again, we want to make sure that we're keeping that out of the seam allowance. Don't want to be stitching through gaffer tape. Just gives it an extra layer of security. Then we're going to get our other piece, pattern piece 7. A little bit more double-sided on the back. And we're going to place that in on top so that it's wrong side down. Okay, we're going to try and see through the vinyl, and we're going to try and match it up with that front shape as much as possible. Okay, great. Then I'm going to change to a zipper foot, and I'm going to top stitch around that edge, going through the 2 pattern piece 7s and making it all really secure. Okay, so we've stitched that other side on, the female side of the magnet, and then we're going to put that to one side. Okay, now we're going to sew the middle to the bottom of the bag. So we're going to grab our outer bottom, and we're going to place it right sides up. I'm going to grab one of our outer pieces, and we're going to place it right sides down. Okay, so it's basically right sides together. I'm going to clip along that top edge. Then we're going to stitch about 1/8 of an inch from the edge, basting the 2 together. Then we're going to get our lining, pattern piece 1, and we're going to lay that right sides down. So we've got the back of the clear vinyl facing upwards. So we're sandwiching the clear vinyl. I'm going to clip along that top edge, and we're going to stitch that with 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. Then Okay, so that's stitched together. I'm going to turn the whole thing around and we're going to repeat that with the other side and the other clear vinyl panel. You want to make sure that your handles are well out of the way. We don't want to be catching those in anything. So we're going to place our vinyl right side down with pattern piece 1 outer right side up. So right sides together. Based along that edge, then we're going to put the lining on the top and stitch 1/4 inch from the edge all the way along. Okay, now we've sewn those two sides together, we're then going to reach through and turn the whole thing the right way out. So it's going to look something like that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to match up those two pieces there, the corners of the lining and the outer. You can put a couple of clips in if you want to along there. And then we're going to top stitch, so we're going to pull that pocket out the way and we're going to top stitch along that top edge a couple of millimeters or 1/8 inch from the edge where the outer meets the clear vinyl. Okay, so the tops of those pockets are now top stitched just above so that we can still get in there, but it's nice and secure. Then we're going to start sewing the bag together. So we're going to place it all right sides together, matching up those top edges like so. And we're going to sew along the right edge. So we're going to clip it together and we're going to sew with a 1 centimetre seam allowance. Now when we come to this bit, this is quite bulky, we've got a few layers there, so you're probably going to want to use a hump jumper on that bit before you continue on, and you're going to go all the way down to the bottom, like I say, using a 1 centimetre seam allowance. Okay, so we've stitched up that side, we're going to repeat that on the left side. Okay, then we're going to encase that with our bias binding. So we're going to wrap that around. Now, because this is the very top edge of the bag, we want to encase those top edges. So to do that, I've got the bias binding towards the back of the bag. Then I'm going to fold over, it's about 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch over that edge. I'm going to pinch the middle of that piece, of that folded piece, so that it brings that edge in a little bit. So that then when I pull the bias binding round, with any luck, the edge on this side is going to be pulled towards the middle, so it's not sticking out, so it's not really obvious that it's folded over. I'm going to pop a clip in there, and you can see that that's really nicely encased then. And I'm going to pop that bias binding all the way down, and I'm stitching just past my stitch line, about a couple of millimeters past it, or about 1/8 inch. Okay, so I put the bias binding on one edge, I'm then going to do that the same on the other side. Okay, then we're going to open up those two seams and we're going to match them together. Okay, so we're going to box the bottom of the bag. This bit can be a little bit tricky because some of the fabrics we're using are thicker, but you just have to have a little bit of a kind of push and pull and you're going to get there. You may also want to mark the middle of this. So you can find that really easily by taking it back to the fold, grabbing a pen and just making a mark there. At the same time, I'm going to do the mark on the other middle, or the other end. And we're matching up that seam line we've just done with that mark. Just want to keep feeling on the inside and making sure that's laying really nice and flat. And I'm going to keep clipping all the way along. Now we have got the bulk of the edge of the pockets under there, so you might want to use a zipper foot on this to get a bit closer. Also, because we're using the waterproof canvas, it shouldn't slip as much. It does depend on your waterproof canvas. It may be more of a rubber backing, but this one's quite slidey, so I'm going to change over to a zipper foot, and we're going to stitch along there with a 1 centimetre or 3/8 of an inch seam. It's important that we get the needle just up to the bulk of that we've got underneath there and not over the top. Now, as you can see, I've got to the bulk of this bit of this seam now, so you're going to be really careful. You might need to hand crank over that bit. Looking for my hump jumper. I'm going to get that to hand as we go up to it. The other thing you can do as well is to go right up against it with the stitches on this side of the seam, and then cast off, go backwards and forwards, and then start again on this side. But you might have a tiny little gap in between, so it's preferable to try and hand crank over that seam or use your hump jumper. Okay, then we're going to do the same on the other side to match it up. Okay, and then, as you may have guessed, we're going to put some bias binding over those seams. Now, when we are coming to this bulk, we just want to make sure that that's cut down as much as we can. I'm going to really cut down some of those layers, make it a little bit easier. And I'm going to cut off some of the seam allowance as well, so that we can get the bias binding over those seams. Again, when it comes to the bias binding, we can fold it over to begin with so that we get that nice edge. Okay, then we're going to reach through and we're going to turn the bag the right way out. Now, you may find that heating up your vinyl slightly, your clear vinyl especially, with a hairdryer helps with this, especially if you have the clear vinyl that is prone to cracking, which is really annoying. I'm going to get in there and push out all those corners at the bottom. And there we go. I really hope you love this tutorial. Thank you so much for watching. I cannot wait to see your Sonia Beach bags. Do post them in the free Facebook group, which you can find in the description below. You'll also find there the Facebook group for the 77 Club if you're a member too. If you have any questions, comments or queries as you go through this tutorial, please do pop them in the comments box below and let me know what fabrics you have chosen to make your bag out of. It's always really fun to see, so drop that as well in the comments below and I'll get back to you. Happy sewing!